Welcome to the How to Life podcast by LifeWorks, a modern day advice column for young adults.
where we answer your questions on how
To
life.
Hi, welcome back to the How to Life podcast with D and T. Today we thought we'd mix things up a little. We ventured to Reddit, specifically the r/self-help thread, and we found a question that we felt really compelled to answer. Today's question is, I'm cruel to the people that I love. How do I stop? I was recently and abruptly broken up with by someone that I've loved for a long time. We both have our issues, but I know at the end of the day, the straw that broke the camel's back was how vicious I would get with my words. I think this abrasiveness comes from when I feel vulnerable. Instead of protecting myself by regulating it, I lash out and try to punish a person who becomes a target of that insecurity. It results in snide remarks to make the person feel inadequate, acting cold, or when it's really bad, straight up cussing them out. Has anyone else dealt with this? I'm really hoping to find some kind of resource to understand this and better manage it. First off, thank you for sharing this very personal question. You are already taking your first step towards vulnerability with courage and compassion for others. I think we could all use a reminder on being kind in the face of conflict. So, how do we show up with kindness in these moments? I think first we must be aware of how we respond in the face of these activating moments.
Hopefully, by examining your experiences through the lens of conflict management styles characterized by certain animals, you'll be able to identify your conflict management style and better understand how to approach conflict with others with greater empathy and efficacy. This framework from the field of psychology is called the Thomas-Kilmann model and attempts to provide a guide on how different people act and react when there's conflict. Generally, they say everyone tends to default to one of 5 conflict management styles: collaborating, competing, compromising, accommodating, and avoiding. Each of these styles is organized on how they balance assertiveness and cooperativeness. Assertiveness being how much they focus on satisfying the needs of themselves, and cooperativeness being how much they focus on satisfying the needs of others. The collaborative style is high assertiveness and high cooperativeness. Conflict is approached as a win win opportunity. The competitive style is also high assertiveness, but it's very low cooperativeness. So conflict is approached as a win lose scenario that must be won. Compromising are moderately assertive and moderately cooperative. This means that they're more willing to give up certain things in the interest of solving the conflict, but they also expect others to give up things and compromise, which ends up resulting in a lose lose scenario where no one's as happy. The accommodating style is low assertiveness and high cooperativeness. They also view conflict as a win lose scenario, but are much more comfortable losing in the interest of preserving the relationship. The avoidant style is low assertiveness and low cooperativeness. They view conflict as a waste of time and effort and something that should be avoided at all costs. Keeping in mind these 2 factors of assertiveness and cooperativeness, let's dive into the 5 animals commonly associated with each of these styles.
Not sure if any of you have learned this in school. Some people have. I thought this was a really great and simple way to memorize and understand. I'm a visual learner, the different types of conflict management styles.
So, from today's question, that kind of led us to start thinking about this and kind of sparked my memory on the conflict management style animals. It sounds like our asker on Reddit is a shark, which I want to say, like all of these styles, just like a tool in a toolbox, they have their best fit where they act as the solution. Every conflict animal has their pros and cons, including the sharks. You might notice that their level of high assertiveness is only shared by one other conflict animal, that of the owl. The only difference is owls have high cooperativeness. This high level of assertiveness simply means that you stand up for what you believe in, you communicate your needs and concerns to the other party, and so this behavior is not objectively a bad thing. The only complications that come about because of this high assertiveness are when it goes too far beyond their level of low cooperativeness, where it bleeds into the realm of being vindictive or maybe hurting someone maybe just because you feel vulnerable and it's activating something in you. That being said, I think we all have experience dealing with sharks in our lives when it comes to conflict. Have you had any specific experience?
In the past, I have very much been a turtle. And that was always triggered when I was likely in the face of a shark. It's a very sensitive child. And so, in the face of conflict, I just got overwhelmed. And I didn't learn until later in life how to really acknowledge and assert my needs. And so, in the face of sharks who are very good at that, I I almost felt dysfunctional, like I didn't know how to respond. And in a way, if you are able to communicate your needs so clearly and so immediately, that is a huge strength. Because really, again, that is something I had to learn over time. And I do commend you for that. It's not the what, it's about the how. How are you then going about that, right? There's a way that you can assert your needs that will leave room for conversation, leave room for others. And then there's a way to assert your needs where you're just shutting everyone out. It sounds like right now we're on the ladder of that spectrum, and we're looking to open up space for others, especially ones that we really care about.
As I reflect on my experiences dealing with different conflict styles, I will have to admit, and this might be a great point to call out, that you may resonate or feel like you identify with multiple different conflict animals, specifically based on particular dynamics you may have with different people in your life. Where in some dynamics, like with your family, you may feel more like a turtle avoiding conflict, feeling like the best approach. But with others, you end up being a shark and acting more competitive, less cooperative. To be honest, I can acknowledge that in certain dynamics, very rare and far and few between in my life, that do in fact bring out that competitive, low cooperativeness side in me. And I can acknowledge that I too, maybe not, definitely not to the extreme of our Reddit poster, but I can also acknowledge that there have been times in my life in the past that I too regret, things that have been said. Where in the moment you may feel like you're just trying to hurt the other person with your words. Having that moment of clarity later is what I feel this person is asking and experiencing, which leads me to believe that there is a lot of hope because I predominantly am a avoidant or turtle. Although I like to think more more so these days I'm a collaborative owl. I try to be.
Mhm.
It's possible to adjust, adapt, and improve your conflict style animal to be one that's a little bit more compassionate and kind and having more patience. I think as we illustrate the pros and cons of these different conflict style animals, you'll start to realize that honoring another person's default mode of conflict management is what will allow you to have that greater empathy, compassion, and patience to approach the conflict when it rises in a more productive and collaborative way. Do you have any specific advice that you may feel could help this person?
No, I feel like you touched on it. I think the biggest piece here is creating empathy. And by going through these different types of conflict management styles, we can not only understand where we are in the moment, but also within different dynamics. Understanding how somebody else might be responding or what conflict management style they are by seeing their behavior. If they're running away, they're avoiding, right? They're showing up as a turtle. This is how maybe they respond, their nature, right? Understanding that that's how they feel, understanding that will help you know how to then take steps towards a resolution. Somebody who's avoidant just needs space and then needs to feel safe enough to come back to have a conversation. Otherwise, the avoidance will continue.
As I think of some actionable advice for this shark to hopefully better regulate their emotions in the moment so that they don't lash out, bite your tongue and count to 10.
So, the next conflict animal is the turtle, or the avoidant conflict management style. This is low cooperative and low assertive. When you think about a turtle, I think it's a really good visual that in the face of conflict, goodbye, right? I'm going back into my shell. I'm shutting off because I don't feel safe. It's overwhelming. I'm just going to peace out. I'm going to dip. That seems like the easiest route for me. I can certainly relate to this. I have turtled many times, and that's because it was the easier solution at the time, right? It gives you that instant relief to just peace out from the situation. But that doesn't result in a resolution. And in a situation where you are hoping to come to some sort of compromise or be able to advocate for your needs, avoidance is not a sustainable long term solution. It's simply a first reaction.
Right. I think you bring up a great point about it's your first reaction. And really, when reflecting, again, as a turtle sometimes myself, the turtle withdraws out of a concern for their own safety or out of a belief in conflict being a waste of time and effort. And to some extent, sometimes this can be true. Very trivial conflicts that aren't very high stakes can very well solve themselves or work themselves out without much input from you at all. Allowing things to take care of themselves, letting them be, can be the right approach. So, the pros to the turtle style is that sometimes it is effective. Again, like with any animal conflict style, taking it to an extreme is where it becomes a problem. If we examine the value that turtles seem to put up on a pedestal of avoiding conflict to, reserve their energy and efforts, but only ever offering temporary or no solutions where these conflicts continually arise time and time again, really the turtle is going against their own values. By putting off and avoiding these conflicts, in total, the amount of instances you have to interact with these same conflicts result in expending tremendous effort just to avoid it. If anyone's ever tried to dodge or avoid someone physically, I think it takes a lot more effort and energy to accomplish that than simply addressing it and moving on. For the turtles, I advise you, if you are struggling with taking it to the extreme, to really take a step back and reflect on whether the conflicts that keep quote unquote bothering you time and time again because you keep avoiding them could really be solved and save you so much time and effort, the thing you truly cherish, by taking that step to come out of your shell and approach it.
Between the turtle and the shark, there's this fear of vulnerability, but there's complete opposite ways of reacting to it, right? Speaking up for a turtle is so scary, right? And engaging, I feel like there's a lot of fear that comes up. And so instead of facing that, you're shutting out. For a shark, you're feeling vulnerable. And instead of trying to move through that, you're trying to get ahead of it. So you're lashing out. You're trying to win before somebody can beat you, right? And so either or both are really not giving opportunities for the other, right? It's either winning or shutting out instead of trying to stay open because that's the scariest thing to do in that moment, or it feels like it.
On to our next conflict style animal, the collaborative owls. They rank highly in assertiveness and cooperativeness. They highly value seeking a creative solution that both people walk away even happier than they thought was possible. While this may seem on the surface like the silver bullet, the panacea, the one size fits all solution to every conflict, that couldn't be farther from the truth. Just as there are admirable qualities that the shark has, the owl also has its own shortcomings. While the owl is incredibly efficient at improving the personal relationship as well as solving the conflict itself, this demands a very trusting and deep personal connection with the other party in the conflict and being able to allocate a tremendous amount of energy and time to solving this problem. So, really, the point I'm trying to make is that the collaborative style of conflict management is really only reserved for very close relationships where this approach would even be effective, where the other person is also approaching it as a semi owl at least. It really isn't appropriate for trivial or minor matters like where are we going for dinner or did you take the trash out?
When first hearing this, it almost feels counterintuitive to what we know, right? We hear collaboration and that's typically a positive thing. But when it comes to conflict management styles, it makes a lot of sense because when you think about what collaboration is, it's a discussion and you're considering all parties involved. And it also implies that everybody is open and willing to take this time and invest in this, right? And so while it can be extremely healthy and very much worth it for your close relationships, like he was saying, for more surface level topics, it's probably not appropriate. And so, depending on the situation, we also have to find which management style is appropriate.
The right tool for the right job, right?
Yeah.
Another way, if you're having a difficult time compartmentalizing how the collaborative owl can be counterintuitive to an extent to a conflict, think of it like this. If every time you had just a minor decision that needed to be made, a person who has a collaborative conflict style, every little thing demands a long discussion and difficult consideration when a lot of things in life require decisions to be made, sooner rather than later. And so you can appreciate where there can be instances that sometimes a quick and easy solution is the best fit. And if you're an owl that's finding yourself mysteriously getting on your other person's nerves for just trying to be thorough in solving and addressing the problem, maybe take a look in the mirror and realize that sometimes it's not that deep. That can save you a lot of emotional work by just realizing that not everything is a crisis that demands everything to be dropped and every nook and cranny and little detail to be ironed out. Sometimes it's as simple as just having a quick discussion and holding some of that analytical part of you back in the interest of achieving the resolution of the conflict via the high assertiveness, as well as serving your high cooperativeness by honoring the fact that the other person may need just a quick and easy answer and solution.
It's really a release of control, allowing imperfection, allowing room for a little fate to just happen, right? I would assume that if you were approaching every situation like this, you are simply just trying to take the best calculated step, but not everything in life allows for that. And so just learning to let go a little can feel scary, but might actually benefit your relationships if you're finding that this is continuously maybe causing some tension, or you're getting reactions that you're not really sure why in these moments. That might be it.
On to the teddy bears, the accommodating, or to an extent, I'm sure, the people pleasers. These folks are very high cooperativeness, but very low assertiveness. So they share that trait with the avoidant turtles, where they feel like conflict is something that should be avoided, and they, in a sense, do by sacrificing their own needs and concerns. While they may voice them, they may be very quick to retract and be willing to sacrifice those in the interest of another person. So you can kind of see where certain combinations of conflict style animals can be extremely detrimental.
I kind of started making faces while you were talking about that because I just feel a little attacked. No, there have been moments, and I would say that was actually my personal lows in life in the past where I took that to the extreme where I didn't even know how to say no to people, right? I was the yes man. And I started saying yes to everybody else's needs, no to mine. And then you wake up one day and you're wondering why you feel like crap. And that's the reason, right? Again, just like avoidance forever, accommodating everyone else's needs all the time is not sustainable for you. Because at the end of the day, you have to look out for you, right? And learning to advocate for your needs can be scary, but the rooted belief is that you are enough. And that is the work, I think, for the teddy bear, for the people pleaser, that you can hold a boundary, you can have needs, you are allowed to have needs, and you are allowed to advocate for them, and you are enough.
Thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable. When I think of this teddy bear conflict style, I mean, everyone has been one of these conflict styles at some point in their life, very likely, including me. I've also had my periods in life where I was much more accommodating. And Really, I think there are two responses to continually sacrificing your needs and concerns. There's either resentment, whereas the frustration, the natural frustration that will, not if, that will subconsciously and then consciously grow from continuously sacrificing your needs. There's two responses: resentment, or unfortunately, depression. Either that frustration and anger begins to build and it expels outward, and then you become suddenly flip from a teddy bear to a shark in the blink of an eye, or you become an avoidant turtle and slowly you just resign yourself to not even addressing the other person, just kind of checking out. Can be extremely detrimental and a very bad place to be. So when trying to think of actionable advice for teddy bears who are really struggling and in this point in time, I think it's important to identify which way your frustration is flowing, whether you find yourself snapping at random people or the person that you're typically having conflict with, and then you're just kind of backpedaling and further accommodating because you feel bad about it, because you're trying to prioritize a relationship, or if you notice yourself slowly kind of fading away. You become so used to sacrificing your own needs and concerns that they don't even register on your radar anymore, which can be just as concerning. But the advice I would give to either of those teddy bears is to think about how much of an impact these relationships that you are repeatedly having this conflict exchange with, where you're sacrificing your needs and then it's giving you that resentment and frustration, is whether or not this relationship is serving you. Because again, the teddy bear is the one that has high cooperativeness, and they're sacrificing their needs because they prioritize the relationships above all else. But what is that relationship if it's not giving you what you need? And who is that other person to be in your life if they're not giving you that?
To add to that, as a teddy bear in an extreme, typically all conflicts are being resolved this way. So it's the high value and the low value. And so I think a way to move forward is first understanding, are you just saying yes to all of the situations? There was a time in my life where I was. And it wasn't even for people that I really knew or cared deeply about. I was just saying yes because that was a pattern. It was a behavior, right? I had just default without even thinking said yes. And so I think an actionable step is before saying yes, before accommodating immediately, pausing and understanding what is the value of this situation to you? Is there value in accommodating? For example, making a quick decision to let's move on because really it doesn't matter that much to me. Or is it a high value situation where you really need to pause because you're feeling some type of way and actually you have needs right now? What does that look like? Just creating that awareness is a huge first step.
Lastly, we have the compromising foxes. These folks have an interesting place on the matrix. They are moderately assertive and moderately cooperative. While they have bits and pieces of almost every animal, really what that ends up doing, and you might be like I was, a little confused when first learning about this model at what makes them very different than the collaborative owls. And I read that it was sometimes described as being too fixated on the idea, like the competitive shark, that these conflict scenarios are a win lose scenario, or more appropriately, a zero sum, where there's only so many points to go around. And so, for us to be fair, quote unquote, as the foxes may think of it, everyone needs to be willing to give up something. But really, compromising, and you'll see this in some circles of political thought, that compromising just makes everyone unhappy. No one really gets what they want. And I think that's the drawback that foxes may be limiting, I think is a good way to put it. They're limiting themselves from seeing the greater opportunities as the owls do, in seeing that creative solutions and creative approaches, that conflict scenarios are not a zero sum game, can result in the pie getting bigger, having more for everyone. In your professional experience, have you come across any compromising foxes?
I feel like this has come up in my professional life quite a bit. It's interesting because we're often taught, perhaps, to work with what's in front of us. And really, it's so much more expansive than that. And you're right, it just takes creativity. It's just almost wiring your brain differently, approaching situations like they say, think outside of the box. We're often always working within the box. And so I totally have run into situations where I was thinking, here's our options. Oh man, we're going through these. That means we're screwed. Looks like we're out of options. And somebody else was able to come in and say, hey, have you thought about that? What if we approach it from these angles instead? And all of a sudden, like you're saying, the pie grew, right? There was more opportunities. There was more ways to now accomplish this and maybe get more out of it. And so I do love that. I think it's a really important reminder for all of us constantly when we're so, in the weeds, we put our heads down, we're working, and we sometimes forget to look up. A way to, I think, expand on this compromising mindset is by inviting other perspectives, inviting in and being open to other people's input. Because I think a lot of the times we can find perhaps people are able to show us opportunities and perspectives that we had no idea were there or completely forgot about.
The compromising fox is kind of the most applicable second solution, I think, from learning about these models, where a lot of day-to-day kinds of situations that aren't so serious that rise to the level of demanding the collaborative nature of the owl are effectively solved, just like the fox kind of embodies the idea of give and take in a relationship. And that is a fair kind of characterization of fair relationships.
So, as we're noticing, these animal identities, if you will, are really your nature, your first reaction. In extremes, any of these management styles are unhealthy. For example, avoiding things forever and not advocating for your needs, or shutting everyone out and winning all the time. Or maybe it's compromising all of the time, right? And not remaining open to other possibilities. The paths forward for all of these, for everyone, is finding balance in the resolution. That may be taking a step back and letting a situation breathe, letting others provide input, or maybe stepping up and asserting yourself more, advocating for your needs. By doing this, we can more clearly create a path forward. Next time conflict arises, I challenge everyone to pause. If you're a shark, maybe pause longer. Before you react, if the goal is to come to a resolution, assess what would be the most productive path forward for you and just trust yourself. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
Visit the links in our bio to submit your questions on how to life
Or book a coaching session with us.